Welcome to Movie Phone!
Why don't you just tell me the movie you want to see?
For episode 2,
For Rick Tittle, press 1. Alright, y'all. Join us today in this episode 2 of 2.
It is 2. Can't confirm.
Our good friend, historian, lover of all things football, soccer, football, and baseball, and everything. One of our amazing friends, good old-time Oaklander, Rick Tittle.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Welcome to the show, sir.
And Jorgito's back.
It's always been my dream to do a podcast in a hen house, so you really have made some dreams
This
come
is beautiful,
true.
right?
This is what everything that we worked for.
Well, we're actually doing this in Richmond, California, where I was born, where I went to junior high, or went to high school, so it's only fitting.
So how about you tell us about your journey about being a broadcaster?
So, in 1939, I wrote Stardust. It was my biggest hit.
Ooh.
So I went to Salesian High School here in Richmond, and then I went to St. Mary's College. And I played football and lacrosse, but I knew I wasn't going to go pro, so I started getting interested in writing. I thought it was still to this day, I think that's my forte. I think I'm better at writing than anything else. So I wrote for the newspaper, and I had a column and things like that. But we had a production truck that was just bought, and so I got into TV production, and then that led to an internship, and that led to being the first person hired for Sports Channel Bay Area in 1990. And so I worked for a sports show when you were 3, and I worked for Sports Channel all through the 90s, and I was a technical director doing even before the Sharks existed. A's, Giants, Warriors, Sharks, Cal Stanford, stuff like that. Transitioned into radio in 99 because they moved all the facilities to compressed digital on Long Island, you remember? Mm. So I transitioned to radio, and I've been in radio ever since. And first I was doing a lot of voiceovers and production, and then when Sirius Satellite started in 2002, they said everyone in this building has to do a show. And they said, can you do a camping show? And I said, I actually hate camping because I have to have my hair pretty. And so they said, what about sports talk? And I was like, eh. So I said, if I can have carte blanche to do what I want. And so I did a lot of sketches, and I pretended to be characters. I tried to make it like a SCTV type of radio show. Then Extra Sports 860 picked it up in 2010. That was the A's flagship. And then a lot of people in the Bay Area were like, wait, there's a guy who's not ashamed to be from Oakland. Because I was always told, don't say you're from Oakland. I'm like, well, then that's fake. Right? So I always said I was from Oakland. I always said the Oakland teams come first, but I could still talk Niners and Giants with anyone else, Warriors. And so then Extra Sports 860 went bankrupt, and then 95.7 The Game started, and I did an audition for them, and I was one of very few people in that audition that got picked. And then that transitioned into when Chris Townsend couldn't do every single game, they said, can you do weekends? And then I started doing A's games on weekends and a lot of nights for the next 8.5 seasons. And then I still do the Sports Byline show, which I've done for more than 20 years, nationally syndicated from 9 to noon West Coast time.
That's funny how you mentioned Extra Sports. We could have potentially been coworkers because if you remember this, I was supposed to intern for Chris Townsend when that station was first created. I had my interview in the Eastside Club for Root Beer Float Day. And it's funny, yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned that they didn't like pro Oakland people. At that time, they knew me I was like a bleacher kid. Mm-hmm. So that they all of a sudden were like, oh yeah, you start next week, next homestand, 2 homestands from now, and it just never happened.
Wow.
So,
I remember those Root Beer Float Days. That one was the one where the ice cream was frozen. And so when we were scooping, the scoopers would break.
Yeah.
And so it was me and Townie, and I think they'd always give us a player. It was either like Sogard or Brandon McCarthy or Balfour had just started. Because one year I did it with Crosby, one time with Dave Justice. Anyway, I feel like I'm name dropping. But anyway, so he broke the thing, and it went like, and all his blood went into the ice cream and just kept scooping. But then I cut my hand. Anyway, that's neither here nor there.
And then it turned to a little strawberry swirl.
There you go. It was more of a parfait.
You know what's crazy is that I told some of my friends and my cousins, like, oh yeah, my friend Rick Tittle, and they're like, what? Oh my God, you know him? And I was like, he's like, yeah, he's just the A's guy, and they're like, no, he's Raiders. So like you're really known in the Raiders community.
So yeah, it's funny because my dad's from Oakland. He went to Fremont High School in Oakland, and so we had Raiders season tickets growing up. My dad was very eclectic. He had tickets to the San Francisco Symphony. We'd go on Wednesday nights, and then Raiders season tickets. And I think it's cool to be like, a little bit multicultural like that. But football was always my first love. But then again, because of my age, first 3 years I was in Little League, the A's won the World Series. The next year, the Warriors won the championship, and the next year, the Raiders won the Super Bowl. So it was World Championship 5 years in a row. So I'm a little kid, I'm an Oakland fan for life. Mm-hmm. Like it was the center of the universe.
Yep.
And I love the fact that the A's wore green and gold and had white spikes. There was no one like us. I love the fact that everyone hated the Raiders and they were renegades and they were like bikers and they cheated. And there was nothing like the Raiders. Still the best uniforms in sports, I think, of any sport. Then the Warriors, after 75, it was pretty dank for 40 years outside of Run TMC for about 3 or 4 years. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I was an Oakland fan for life. So if you told me as a little kid, because I would listen to these shows and I would call in, I would call guys like Scotty Sterling and Candido at pregame, postgame, that I would do the A's and I would do the Raiders. Like, I would never have believed that because you have to know what you're talking. When I first got the A's gig, I got called and I go, we want you to do the weekends. We think you have the passion and the knowledge. So I made sure there's not going to be one minor leaguer that I don't know. There's not going to be one pitch that I don't watch. Because I took it so seriously. Like, I want to be someone that you can go to and say, what's up right now and, at Stockton. I would go to Stockton on my own dime. And I would go to Rayleigh Field back when we had AAA there on my own dime. And I would interview Jamal Weeks and Michael Taylor and Josh Donaldson, these guys. And then I played on my pregame show. No one told me to. I didn't get extra money because I'm a lifelong A's fan. And so I had access, so I took advantage of it.
I mean, I went too. Jeez.
That's crazy because whenever you talk about like sports in the Bay Area, like it always comes down to Oakland being such an underdog, especially with you, Casey, with Brody, like all you guys were just doing it just for the love of Oakland East Bay sports. Like what does all this shit that's going on mean to you right now?
Well, I think if I was, like, the Raiders moved when I was a senior in high school. And I can't tell you how devastated I was because the Raiders were the coolest team in the world. And I stayed with them. There were people that on my street, because back then, that was right before the Niners dynasty began. Mm-hmm. So you could switch and get Niners season tickets. And I understood them. They wanted to tailgate. They wanted to support a team that was local. I totally get it. But for me, it was in my DNA. So for those 13 years, I stayed loyal to the team, even though it was hard to see their games, kind of like this last week where I didn't get to see the Raiders till the Niners were over at Baltimore this week. Yeah. But I think if I was younger, I would be more devastated. I have a little more. I mean, I realize now that sports is not life and death like I used to think. But it is bizarre. I don't know what we did as Oakland fans to have this happen twice with our football team. I mean, I used to think what happened with the Warriors sucked. That almost feels like nothing because they're 8 miles to the west.
Yeah, it's not that. I don't think that's such a big deal compared to.
That would be a big deal because other stuff didn't happen.
Exactly.
But I do remember when they had their opening party for Breaking Ground and they had all these cranes doing dances. And I was working for the Warriors flagship, 95.7, and I didn't go. And I'm like, look, I'll support them. I'll be a Warrior fan. But I'm not going to go down there and go, hip, hip, hooray, you're leaving Oakland.
Like Louis Schaff?
Yeah. But I went to the very last Warrior game where they lost the championship to Cleveland. And I remember just walking out of there stunned. I went to the very last Raider game twice and walking out of there stunned. And then coming up here Thursday week, it's going to happen again. And it's just weird that it's all happening bam, bam, bam like that.
Does this feel weird? I mean, so I know that it's depressing. It's weird. It feels surreal that the A's are going to leave to Sacramento, and who knows what's going to happen after that. Like, what are you feeling right now as like a fan who's seen every other team leave? Like, is this it feels like a gut punch to you, or is it kind of just, are you over it, or?
I'm not over it. This feels way worse than the Raiders because we were told I mean, the A's helped the Raiders leave. They did everything they could to make the Raiders leave. And then they said, we're rooted in Oakland. We're not going anywhere. We're building a treehouse, and we're doing that. You can come in for $1. All these things. They left. We're not leaving. And so I thought, okay, at least we're a big league city. And even though my football is my favorite sport, baseball season is my favorite season because it's every day. And I love baseball so much. And I kind of feel like, plus with football, you go to a football game, they're not old ladies knitting. There aren't little kids running around. It's toothless motorcycle hags and meth dealers. So you... It's way worse because not only is baseball more important to the community, but also it affects way more people. And especially when we were promised that happened. There was this weird sort of love-hate relationship with the Davis family because I remember going to the town hall meeting that the NFL had, and they had it in San Diego and St. Louis and Oakland about we don't want to lose our teams. And St. Louis put a big dossier of like 500 pages. The San Diego did 100 pages, and then Libby did 5 pages, which was like, we'll move some dirt around for you if you want. But it was at the Paramount Theater. I wasn't allowed to ask a question as a media member.
Oh yeah, I remember this.
Mark Davis comes out and everyone cheers, and I'm like, this is like Stockholm Syndrome. You love the Davis family because Al created the mystique. And what's funny is that usually a father wants their sons or daughters to be interested in what they're in. Al wanted Mark nowhere near the team.
Yeah.
And so it's like this weird Stockholm Syndrome. That is not the case with John Fisher. There's no love for him. And, Wally Haas was saying it's unforgivable. I just saw an article today in the Chronicle about Mickey Morabito, who I like over the years. I really like Mickey. He always said, you tell it like it is. He didn't hate me for scathing on the team. But he said that one time Walter Haas Sr., the owner of the A's, came down to the clubhouse and he said, is it okay if I take a ball? And he goes, you paid for all the balls. He goes, I know, but I don't want to. He's like, that's the kind of owner, someone with humility and some class. Like he didn't want to mess anything up, even though he paid for everything. And so it's the complete 160 dichotomy now, the contrast with a guy like Fisher, who doesn't understand that you're a custodian of a team. You don't just own it.
Yeah, it was like that article too. I think it was the similar article, and it was just a quote that they were watching a game in the suite with Reggie Jackson. The Coliseum was sold out. It's like, what? To capacity. And Reggie Jackson just sits back and goes like, oh man, look at all these people here. You must be making a lot of money.
Oh yeah, I saw that quote.
And Haas just goes, hey man, it's not about that. Like, you don't get it. It's about, look at the families, look at the kids who are having fun. And that's, to me personally, that's the worst part about this whole thing is the future generations. They're not going to be able to grow up like we did. I've said it many times before, but I mean, like you said before, again, just to piggyback, it's not life or death, but I think about the future of everything. And to kind of segue to that, the Ballers are here. What does that mean to you? I know it's exciting watching the Ballers. It's refreshing to see a team invested in Oakland. What has that transition been to you since they've been into existence?
Well, I mean, it's interesting that the transition is happening simultaneously. The A's are in their last season here. And I really, really love the Ballers. I think what Brian Carmel and Paul Friedman has done is amazing. I remember I would drive, because I get off the Bay Bridge coming back from San Francisco, and I'd go by Raimondi and look, and I'd be like, it's not going to happen. They're not going to be ready. And, I went to the press conference that you guys were at last year. At Laney, and then when it didn't work out with Laney again, and I heard Raimondi, I thought, oh no. Because I remember playing soccer there on broken glass and all the homeless encampments, and I'm like, you can't take little kids out to Raimondi. Amazing what they did, and not only amazing what they did, but I have to give a big shout out to Tyler Peterson, who they brought in from the Rocky Mountain Vibes, who does the broadcasting, but he's the assistant GM. He put together a team with the help of Wakamatsu and Micah Franklin and Aaron Miles, and they were the second best team the entire season, and they went to the playoffs, and they did get one playoff victory. It's too bad they didn't win the whole thing. And of course, the irony that the High Wheelers, the other team that had to create, won it. But I digress. It's an amazing thing
for Oakland.
It's an amazing thing that they accomplished, and if you look at it in the grand scheme, of course it doesn't compare. You have one of the greatest franchises in the history of American sports, and you know, you just think about, I've been to the Hall of Fame, and, you know, I forgot Ty Cobb was on the A's. I mean, you just see all these names, Jimmy Fox, and then when I was growing up with the Mustache Gang, and then when I was in college with, you know, the Bash Brothers, and when I was in high school with Billy Ball. I mean, there's just so many amazing eras, and some really crappy eras too, you know? But you can't compare them. Yeah. But you kind of think, I think a lot of times, people think, what can I do as one person? Like, nothing. It's all, you know, think locally, or think globally, act locally. They actually did do something.
Yeah.
And when people say, I remember one guy told me, I can get into an A's game cheaper. I'm like, well, then go to an A's game. I go, you don't understand what's happening. That's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and they have 40,000 seats. So if that's all it's about for you, then fine. But that's not what we're talking about here. So you can't really compare them. I just love the fact that they got over 100,000 fans in West Oakland. Knock on wood, it went out without a hitch. I didn't hear about anybody getting jumped. I didn't hear about a lot of cars getting broken into.
I got drunk and left my truck overnight there.
Did it get smashed?
Not at all. It was it was amazing. It was like I could.
It was amazing.
Well, like nothing. I left so much stuff in the back of the truck. Yeah, and then one night I hope no one's listening from the hood, because then they're gonna be like, oh,
it won't happen again.
No, I left completely open the window to my truck with my work phone still like visibly there the whole game. And then I walk out and I'm like, oh, and I was not drunk that game.
Wow.
But that was pretty,
How did you get into such a stupor?
He's getting old, people.
I'm getting old.
He's getting old.
But no, back to the Ballers. I mean, it's like, to me, they're not here to replace the A's.
Right.
They're just here because we said we're not going to give up, and this is what's not giving up is, right? It's like everyone thought that baseball was going to be over in Oakland. I knew that there was going to be a pro baseball in Oakland until forever. I didn't think it was going to happen this fast. Like, I didn't think they were going to build this so fast.
By the way, because I know the people at the Ballers, when they were thinking about this, if they didn't get the 68s, they weren't going to do it.
Yeah, that's what Paul reached out to me. Yeah. It was...
If you guys were like, no, hell no, they would have been like, well, then there's no use. We have to have the fans of Oakland embrace us.
Yeah, there was talks about them going to Alameda and playing there, and I said, well, if you want to be an Oakland team, you have to somehow figure it out in Oakland, because then someone's gonna say, well, they're not from Oakland, they're playing in Alameda.
Right.
And I appreciate everything that Paul and Brian's done, and Tyler, and even all the coaching staff, the players. I mean, you see a lot of these players that are from the middle of nowhere, America, and they come to Oakland, and they're like, oh my God, at the end of the season, they're just like amazed by, like, this is not as bad as people thought.
They're the only team that pays for lodging.
Yeah.
And at first there were some hiccups, but then they got them into some better places, but they didn't have to do all that.
Yeah, even with Kelsey Whitmore, when she played for Team USA and her agent advised her not to come back, and she said, "No, I'm going back."
Right.
And that means a lot, because it shows that she knows what we know. It's Oakland. Like, there's no place like it. Its fan base is rabid. So, man, I mean, and considering that the Ballers they made that happen in what, like a month and a half with that stadium?
5 months, I think.
Well, I mean,
well, you think about, there were only 4 position players that were there from day one to the end. It was Tyler Lozano, Dondre Hubbard, Brian Burkell, and Noah Martinez. So, like, I know that Tyler made the trade for Brett Barrera with Idaho Falls Chuckers, where he worked for 2 years. I know he made the trade with Halsema and AD when they got Piasek and Brett Carson with the Vibes, where he worked there as well. So it's good to have a guy like, that's why they made sure they had a guy like that was connected, that knew the league. Because you couldn't come in blind on the league like that.
That's amazing, man. Brett Barrera has freaking killed it, man. I loved the whole vibe there, man. It was kind of, and you know, people ask me like, oh, how do you feel about the A's last year? And I think the Ballers softened that blow. You know what I mean? And it's.
If you had told me that I would be more interested in them in the A's, I would have said no.
Yeah.
But
seriously.
I was going up to Davis. I went to Idaho Falls for a series. Like, I was more. Of course, I'm following the A's because I love them. You know, I'm like, look what Brent Rooker and Lawrence Butler are doing and all that. But I was hanging on every pitch with the Ballers, and I was like, I'm surprised that I got that into it.
Yeah, and even with the attendance, like you spoke upon how many people came out this past season. It was cool seeing that last month. I feel like people were just talking in the city of Oakland, like, hey, check out a Ballers game. Because I know that when they were in existence, people were so fed up with the stadium drama with the A's. They were just, I felt like they didn't want to watch baseball. I mean, they
right, and I get it. And there are some people who be like, I'm not going to go to an indie league team.
Exactly, yeah.
And that's fine. I get it, right?
Yeah.
But now we'll see next year, now that there's no other choice.
Yeah.
Like, do you want to go out with your kids or your girlfriend or boyfriend, or do you want to go out with your, mom and dad, take your grandpa or your grandma to a game? Like, now you can.
Yeah.
And you're with a team that actually cares, which is pretty cool.
And there's a bunch of history in that park, a lot of legends that played there too, which is the coolest part. And I like how the Ballers have murals just to celebrate those players in the past and celebrate the fans, and everything they're doing, in my opinion, is perfect. So yeah, I mean, if y'all haven't been to a Ballers game, come out next season.
All right, I'm gonna throw you a curveball. Do you pay attention to the Roots?
You know what? I was actually asked to do the Roots on radio when they first started by Tommy Little, and I kind of thought that was more of a job for a young guy at the time. I've been to, honestly, about 1 to 2 Roots games per year. So I love the fact that we have the Roots, but I usually don't go to all the games. I'm still a huge Earthquakes fan, from the days as the Clash. Yeah. I still love the Earthquakes, even though they're extremely disappointing.
Owned by John Fisher.
Shocker!
All my teams are owned by John Fisher. But I think it's amazing. We'll see what happens next year with the Roots of the Coliseum.
Okay.
And I know the Ballers want to get in the Coliseum. Just either Father's Day, 4th of July, or opening day. Maybe all 3. That would be really cool.
That'd be cool, because then we'll bring back the whole telegame scene. We'll keep it there, and I think that a lot of people are saying 1968 to 2024 about the Coliseum. I'm like, the Coliseum's not going anywhere. It's just a team. It's not like it's gonna be imploded or anything like that.
And like, ironically, you're gonna have the Roots still there. There's gonna be concerts there, so the Coliseum isn't gonna implode like Candlestick did. So
most of the time they do tear it down.
They do.
Yeah, that's because they got a new one coming in, and we don't have a new one.
Yeah. But I hope people go to the Roots games. Go support community things like Roots, Ballers.
I had Ed Reese on my show. I've had some Roots players on the show over the years, and I think it's great that they have that. I would love to see them somehow move up if they ever could. Yeah.
Well, it's all about the money, baby. Yeah. What are you expecting about the A's to end the season and to kind of?
Well, I'm actually. I have some concerns.
Okay. All right.
I have a feeling, because there are a lot of people that have had years to plan nefarious things. And I'm not saying 68's last dive bar or whomever. I hope the worst thing we'll see is a couple of people hanging in effigy. But I remember that last Raider game. It's the only time I went on the field after the game, and the Jags won. Derek Carr has a prayer circle, and little Gardner Minshew runs by me with the Jags, gets in the prayer circle. But I looked in the stands, and all I saw was people punching each other. Raider on Raider fights, people stealing everything that they could, pulling down banners. And I think it'll be 1,000,000 times worse at the last A's game because of this build-up, and because of people like you. There's going to be a lot of, I'm just kidding, there's going to be a lot of, I think, retribution, because you're right, my whole life, I've been going to A's games at the Coliseum, my whole life. And to think, it's not going to feel real to think like, well, this isn't going to happen anymore. And of course it's going to happen again. And I think when that hits us, that no, it's not going to happen anymore, then things might get a little bit nuts.
I don't know. I think, at least for me, I'm kind of just over them. Like, I feel closure. Like, finally, like, let's fucking move on from all this shit that, like, I mean, I was part of it since '98 all the way to, like, moving. It was always in the back of my head, and now finally it's like, okay, you finally had balls, and well, not really balls, because you're going to somewhere where it's like they're not even going to charge you for the lease, and you're just a cheap ass owner and that's afraid of the fans, because that's why you're leaving, like going to West Sac to hide.
And not use their name and not have the elephant, but you know.
Apparently the elephant thing, I don't know. I don't know if that's true or not. But I don't know. I think, at least for me personally, you know, it's the Roots are gonna play there next year. I don't want no damage to the seats. I don't want no damage to anything with the Coliseum. You know, just fuck you, John Fisher's chants really loud. Sell the team again. You know.
I wonder where he'll be. He definitely won't be there.
He won't. No.
Has anyone seen Dave Kaval since?
Who?
Exactly. I haven't seen him. Is Billy Bean still alive? John Fisher, he's never been there. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm not surprised. So, I mean, I wonder if Kaval might make an appearance. I'm pretty sure he won't.
I went to Caval's press conference when he was hired.
Okay.
He was actually in the West Side Club. And I heard about like, oh, I went to Stanford and I'm from Cleveland and I wrote a book about going to every stadium and, you know, I helped get the stadium built in San Jose for the Quakes and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, this guy seems cool. And then I remember going to an event at Ricky's in San Leandro where I can't remember what it was, but I am seated and Dave was one of the speakers. So we're sitting together on the dais and I was like, so anyway, and he was like, and so I said to you, I was like, Kaval, he's not very friendly, and you went, he'll only talk to you on social media when everyone can see it. And I was like, oh, and I thought, okay, and then I didn't realize what an a-hole he was. And I was just like, okay, that kind of showed me right there a little bit.
He's a snake. You know, shout out to the San Jose Ultras. They warned our fan base, and they were happy when he left San Jose. So that just goes to show you the power of the fans, you know. But
I am an ultra, by the way.
I know. I got nothing. I love the Ultras. But
well, they gave me a scarf.
Yeah.
I listened.
Well, what do you think about all the protests that was going on in 2023? The sell the team stuff.
I think it was amazing. I want to say when Stu Clary, the head coach of Vacaville High School, he came on my show and talked about a reverse boycott. I want to say that was the seedling of what happened, and it was an amazing day. And then Rob Manfred said, they got 26,000, and I thought, oh, that's how it is, huh? But I actually knew a guy who hung Fisher in effigy from the third deck. It only stood up there for about 15 seconds. But I mean, that's the kind of thing where I was talking about with Paul and Brian Carmel Paul Friedman and Brian Carmel of the Ballers, because you think, what can I do as a fan? Because we feel so helpless, right?
You do.
You're watching your dog bleed to death on the lawn and you can't do anything. So they did something. But for us, that's what we did. Now, I'll tell you this, the old man here, when the Raiders were moving, they were on Monday Night Football in 1982, and that we decided, because they had these shirts that said "Go Oakland Raiders," and the "Go" was crossed out and it said "Stay." So we were all wearing those shirts, and we said at the end of the first quarter, we're all going to leave our seats and go to the concourse, and so the whole nation will see an empty stadium. So we did that for about 3 minutes, and then we went back to our seats, and they moved to LA. So it's like I said, we feel that reminds me of what we did then.
Yeah.
And you just try to do whatever you can.
Oh God.
So,
protesting.
Man.
Jeez.
So we're saying as American fans are bitches for not standing up to no. So that's what drives me crazy, is that like in Europe, like, you know, the whole Super League. Remember the Super League that was announced and all that?
They tried it.
And they riot and they went to the I remember Man United Stadium full of fans just kind of saying "fuck you." We're not gonna fucking do this shit.
Yeah.
Like,
they have pitch.
What is the difference? What do you think is the difference from that to here? Is it the years of a team being there for so long? Or what? Like what?
Well, over there, and as you know, I've been there many times. Been to a lot of stadia over there, and they have wrote for a newspaper over there as well, a soccer column.
What's the name of it?
European Soccer Weekly
in the UK.
Yeah, it's all right.
Oh,
it's
wow.
all right. And so you got to remember, when you were a little kid, your grandfather had a tat of the club. Like it goes back to probably the 1880s, maybe even earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so they would have these bond schemes. They have all these little things where the club would try that, and sometimes you would do a pitch invasion where you could just go onto the field, sit crisscross applesauce, and the ref would go like, "Oh, I guess we're done.
We're having tea."
Yeah, I guess we're done. Like, you could do things like that. That's like when I worked at the World Cup in '94 at Stanford, when FIFA came out to inspect the stadium, and it had 8 lanes of track, but they said, "How do you keep the fans off the field? Where's the razor wire? Where's the moat?" And they're like, outside of Morgana the Kissing Bandit, we don't really run on the field in America unless you want to like do a streaking disco duck thing. And so there, they will do that.
Yeah.
So the fans are much more, they care much more because it's much more in their face. In America, like, we don't know where John Fisher lives, we don't know what he does. But one of the more disappointing things about him, I can tell you one of the more disappointing things about him. So his dad, Don Fisher, no longer with us, Don and Doris, they started the Gap on Cherry Lane and San Bruno. They sold Levi's. That's all they did. They sold Levi's. Like, how would that work? Multi-billion-dollar worldwide industry. They helped save the Giants with McGowan and Shorenstein and Nibby and Alan Beyer and all those guys. And so then when their kid was like, well, I want to buy a team, that's the thing. He's a Bay Area guy. He went to Cal. It's not like you have an owner come in from Boston and say, oh, I finally get to own a team. And be like, I'm moving him. Like the guy from Oklahoma City, he took the Sonics to Oklahoma City. This is a Bay Area guy. And that's the thing that makes it even more unbelievable that he's that out of touch and can break that many hearts. Like, I despise the Denver Broncos, but I would never buy them and move them. I couldn't be I couldn't be that heartless.
But Bay Area unite, though, you know.
Bay Area unite, baby.
Except
Oakland.
Until Oakland's involved in it, then we just look over them.
You know, we've been fighting for the A's forever, and I just wanted to get your scoop on all this shit that we've been through, from city hall meetings, from when we first met to like that was back in the day. Like, I can't believe it's been that long. Like, what are your thoughts about that? Remember, I mean, we held rallies without even no A sanctioned rallies. Like, it was literally you coming out. It was Josh Reddick coming out because we just knew you, and we're like, hey, we're gonna do this. You know, we don't give a fuck.
We got Kara Savoy one.
We got Kara Savoy one time, and we were like, fuck it, we're gonna do our own thing because that's the way we were just treated as Ace fans. You know?
Well, I got to give a little shout out to Gene Kwan, who twice helped us with that. But yeah, I remember going to Victory Court to that planning meeting, and it was Doug Boxer and Libby Schaff was actually on the panel. And it reminded me why I hate politics so much, because I sat there, and Victory Court was the last thing on the docket, if you might remember. And there was a guy saying, you know, I own a McDonald's in Temescal, and I'm going to do the new drive-through over here. And this woman was like, yeah, I'm going to vote no. And everybody else voted yes, and I saw her on BART, and I was like, what are you doing? Anyway, I'll give a shout out to Oaktown Pirate, who's no longer with us, because he brought a real naval saber into City Hall. How he brought a sword. Do you remember him? So
I forgot all about this.
I'll give a shout out to George, who was our security when
Jorge,
an unhoused heckler came in. Jorge grabbed him by the collar and led him away, and the guy said, you ain't 5-0, but he did it anyway. Now, we've been through a lot together, and we fought for my dad came to a couple of those rallies. They said an Oakland native, and it's just, after what we were promised with Rooted in Oakland, it just feels like such a backstab, because the Warriors and the Raiders never promised they would stay. So it just is really, really lame.
Yeah, and a lot of people think that the protests and everything, the vast majority, I would honestly blame social media. A lot of things that I've heard was that too little, too late. And I'm like, we've been doing this isn't years. Yeah, it wasn't just last year. Like you were just saying earlier, you were doing this for the Raiders. Like with,
Oakland
1981 and stay Oakland Raiders. So we've been doing this for years, so that's why we fight so hard. So,
and by the way, I got to throw out, like, not just Kaval but Catherine Aker as well.
Oh yeah.
Who, I'll just say this, that when we traded Sonny Gray, and I just shredded it, and then she complained to my boss, and she said, we're the A's flagship and we can't have someone like this. And I responded, I don't work for you, and until you pay my salary, you can't tell me what to say. So I never really cared for her after that.
No, I know, and I had to work with her. I was going to say the pleasure, but there was no pleasure at all. It was just multiple times of just kind of disagreements and her not understanding, you know, how us fans felt or how we work or how even the community works around things in Oakland. And it's again, it's just the same thing with the Ballers. I mean, they got it done. It just takes knowing Oakland, the community, right? And I think that's where they lacked, and they thought that it was just like, we're major league, so you just have to bow down to us, and it's like that's not it.
That's why I want to give a shout out to the people on the A's who are cool. Like, I've known Dave Renetti since the 90s. I can think about a lot of good people over there, a lot of the security guards, of course. Yeah, I like Mickey Morabito. We like Steve Vucinich, who retired. Obviously, I love Ken Korak. I mean, there are so many good people that work there, and I feel bad for them that they're sort of. Can you imagine having a boss that's this evil and mean, and you have your dream job? You're working for a major league team, maybe your favorite team in your hometown, and then your boss sucks and makes you tainted some way. So I just want to give a shout out to the people who have had to put up with that ownership group.
I mean, I could just leave, get another job.
All right. And on
we appreciate you, Rick.
Yeah, thank you for joining us, man. It's an honor and pleasure, man. Oakland 68's podcast, episode 2. We out.